Well, hello, guys, and welcome. Today we'll be talking about the New Deal critics, and even though it seemed like the New Deal would be, popular and universally accepted, there were a lot of people who didn't feel that the New Deal was good for the United States, and they all had their own different reasons. But it is important to know that there was a significant amount of people who just felt that the New Deal was not the proper channel to go down. Group number one would be the populists, and it wasn't that they thought that the New Deal was a horrible idea. In this case, they just felt that, first of all, too much focus on big business and not enough on the common man. So they were saying, look, this is good, but it doesn't go, excuse me, doesn't go far enough. Dr. Francis Townsend, he advocated for an even more radical redistribution of wealth. And what we mean by this, when you say talk about redistribution of wealth, that's usually done through taxes, where you tax people who have a lot of money, and that tax money goes to the government, and then through the government is distributed to other people. And Dr. Francis Townsend felt that we really should take money from the rich and the richer, not necessarily like super wealthy, but even upper middle class, and redistribute that money to give a more equal amount of money to everyone. He also did help, form Social Security. Then we have Huey Long. This is even more extreme. He argued for seizing all money from people making more than $1 million. And remember, $1 million in the 1920s and 30s was a lot of money. Let's say somewhere like 15, 20 million today, something like that. And then, of course, with that money, redistributing it to poor families. And so a lot of this was, hey, look, we know that there's an effort to help people, but we don't think it's going far enough. Now, we'll also see later that there's other people that think that the New Deal went too far. So this is what we'd call an attack from the left, saying, look, we know you're helping people or you're trying to help people, but you're not doing enough and it's not quickly enough. Now, we just said, left wing critics of the New Deal. Remember, typically, not always, but typically, left refers to Democrat and liberal, where right refers to conservative and Republican. Not always, but typically. And so, if you wanted to put it in the specific words of what all those three people said in the previous page, what they were really saying was the New Deal was trying to fix a fundamentally flawed system, that is, capitalism. Their problem, the left wing critics, was look, capitalism is a bad system no matter what. Sure, you can make a few switches here and there. Sure, you can tinker with it here and there to try to lessen the negative impacts of things like the depression. And remember, this is not the first depression we've had. We've had tons and tons and tons before and tons after. And the left wing critics were saying this is just not a good idea. It's not stable enough. And so they were saying you're trying to fix the system which is flawed, but instead you should completely replace it. In addition, they felt that there wasn't much really being done to lessen inequality among the people. Now, sure, financially, you're going to say, well, that's why they want to redistribute the money. But what about socially? Now, of course, this leads into the, again, returning of the popularity of communism and socialism, though to a lesser extent than it was during the infamous Pomerades, but they again started to gain popularity. Now, a switch to either communism or socialism would actually accomplish the change that some were looking for. And this would be a major, major, major change, almost kind of what the debate right now is, if you listen to some of the news and the political speeches. So, labor relations were also an issue. Now, of course, everyone is suffering. So the workers are just looking for a job and trying to get paid, and the employers are just trying to stay in business. So the workers, like always, want an increase in pay as every day was getting more and more difficult to survive. And the employers, from their standpoint, hey, we're not making any money. We want you to give concessions, meaning give up benefits or give up pay. Otherwise, we are going to go out of business, and then nobody has a job, and everybody loses in that situation. So you have these two really diametrically opposed, viewpoints. And of course, when these two forces come, you have a potential for labor unrest or strikes. In comes the Wagner Act. What it does, it allows to organize unions, bargain collectively. Now, what this means is that if you're at a shop, let's say, or a factory or something like that, and there's 100 employees, well, instead of having individual contracts with each individual employee, you would collectively bargain. You'd say, okay, here's what you make if you've been working for 1 year. Here's for 2 years. Here's what you make if you work on this machine. Here's how much money you make if you work on this machine. And it's a contract of employment which dictates, how much you get paid, what the conditions are, and it applies to everybody. And the idea is that together, as a union, you are stronger, and it's more difficult to take advantage of individual employee or take advantage of employees as a group, whereas it's easier to take advantage of them as individuals. It also outlawed the Wagner Act outlawed unfair labor practices, required employees to bargain directly with the leaders. So every union has a leader, and the employers have to negotiate with that leader. And also, these laws were actually enforced through the NLRB, which is still with us today. And of course, I think, as we know, labor unions were not always popular. In fact, some people associated them with communism, and they, really, against that sort of thing in the United States. But labor unions did, and the Wagner Act, they did increase under the Wagner Act. Now, there were people who were also against labor unions, and why? Well, labor unions would lead to strikes, and people viewed strikers as ungrateful. They're saying, look, you are lucky enough, I know lucky enough is a weird word, to have a job, but you're not going to work, while others are begging for a chance just to have a chance to work, and you're going to say, nah, that's cool, I don't want to work. And again, because of this, strikes and unions, they began to be associated with communism. And there's always violence. We've mentioned many times that any side accused of violence, or any side that starts violence, is really going to lose the public debate. And some strikes resulted in violence, which really turned off the public. The most famous one was the Memorial Day Massacre. Strikers and police confronted each other. Someone threw a bomb. It's like the second time someone threw a bomb. And another one was Haymarket Riot. And again, they're not sure who. I guess bombs were easy to come by back then. I don't know. Police opened fire, I guess, randomly, and 10 killed, 30 wounded. And again, this has the effect to turn people off to unions. All right. Thank you so much.